درباره اعدام‌های حکومت و قتل‌هایی که همه می‌دانند برای بقا انجام می‌دهد، بسیاری استدلال می‌کنند که برای ترساندن مردم است. خیلی ها میگویند برای اطمینان دادن به نیروهای خودی است که ما تا آخر با شما هستیم و تقریباً اکثریت قریب به اتفاق برخلاف حامیان حکومت که میگویند نشانه اقتدار نظام است، این اعدام‌های شتاب زده را نشانه وحشت حکومت می‌دانند. آنها میگویند این اعدام‌ها نشانه قدرت نیست، بلکه برعکس نشانه ضعف و ترس است. فیثاغورسیان وقتی در پروسه تعیین اندازه وتر مثلث قائم الزاویه با اضلاع 1 به رادیکال 2 رسیدند، از اینکه حاصل عدد صحیح نبود وحشت کردند و دیوانه‌وار به تقسیم ادامه دادند. در نتیجه فقط اعداد جلوی اعشار اضافه می‌شد. هر عدد اضافه شده مقابل اعشار تشدید بی‌آبرویی جماعتی بود که می‌گفتند جهان از اعداد صحیح و قابل شناخت تشکیل شده. اعدام همان تقسیم دیوانه‌وار و کشته‌های ما اعداد مقابل اعشار و نشانه بی‌آبرویی حکومت تمامیت خواهند. این اعدام‌ها تلاشی مذبوحانه علیه ترس حکومت از ناشناخته هاست. کسی در توییتر نوشته حزب اللهی احمق سرکوب و اعدام را نشانه پیشرفت نظام قوی در کنترل میدانی می‌داند. کوره‌های آدمسوزی هیتلر در زمان خود پیشرفته و مدرن‌ترین کارخانه‌های جهان بودند از لحاظ انتخاب تعداد قربانی، تقسیم زمان سوختن، پسماند انسانی و کشتار سیستماتیک. حکومت و حامیانش اما گویی متوجه این ترس دیوانه‌وار خود نیستند. آنها ترجیح می‌دهند در توهم قدرت بمانند و قبول نکنند که جنبشی آغاز شده که با این کارها متوقف نمی‌شود. مردم پس از قتل مجیدرضا رهنورد فریاد زدند خامنه‌ای سرکش رئیس کل داعش.
رئیس کل داعش! رئیس کل داعش! بسیجی سپاهی! داعش ما شمایی! بسیجی سپاهی! داعش ما شمایی! خوب میدونیم کار کیه! سپاه و داعش یکیه! خوب میدونیم کار کیه! سپاه و داعش یکیه! خوب میدونیم کار کیه! نظام فاسد نمیخواد! نظام فاسد نمیخواد!
21 آذر شهرک چیت کرد.
حجاب شده! نلون داریم نخونه!
در مشهد مردم به جای اینکه بترسند در اعتراض به قتل مجیدرضا رهنورد به خیابان آمدند و به جماعت خاموشان گفتند جوان بعدی از شماست اگر بنشینید.
مشهد، خیابان احمدآباد مشهد، روزی که مجیدرضا رهنورد رو صبح اعدام کردن در ملأ عام. بگیر ازش منفی بد میشن.
جوون بعدی از شما!
بگی که
آقای نشسته‌ها! جوون بعدی از شما!
حضور این مردم که با خشم پس از قتل مجیدرضا رهنورد در مشهد فریاد میزنند و بسیجی و سپاهی را داعش خود مینامند، باید به رهبر جمهوری اسلامی نشان بدهد که ماشین کشتار او دیگر کار نمی کند. این بار حتی اعدام در ملأ عام که شاهدانش فقط چند بسیجی بوده‌اند هم کارساز نبوده. آنها در واقع برای قوت قلب دادن به بسیجی‌ها مجیدرضا رهنورد را به طور خصوصی برایشان کشتند. همینقدر تلخ و سیاه و تباه. اسماعیل بخشی فعال کارگری گفته شرف که ندارید، آدم هم که نیستید، اما اگر راست میگویید که قدرت دارید قبل از اعدام اعلام کنید اعدام در ملأ عام صورت میگیرد تا معلوم بشود قدرت دست کیست و چه کسی دیگری را دار میزند بی وجودهای حرام لقمه. مردم بسیار عصبانی تر از آن هستند که بشود تصور کرد، به طوری که همدلان جمهوری اسلامی هم دیگر می نویسند بدجور کفریند خلق الله. خبرهای زیادی می رسد از ریزش در نیروهای سرکوب. تصاویر زیادی از گفتگوی بسیجی‌ها با فرماندهانشان منتشر می شود. مانند این که در پاسخ آماده باش نوشته راستش ما دیگه نیستیم. اسم من را قبل از این که دستم به خون کسی آلوده بشه پاک کن. پدر و مادرم هم دیگه از من رو برگردوندن. یا این گفتگو منتسب به یکی از گردانهای سرکوب بسیج استان خوزستان که در پاسخ آماده باش او هم میگوید دیگر نمیخواهد مقابل هموطن و همشهریش بایستد که از شرایط آسی شده و حق دارد معترض باشد. درباره مجیدرضا رهنورد مردم هیچ کدام از حرفهای حکومت را باور نکردند. حتی فیلمی که منتسب به اوست در روز حادثه. این حالت در مردم و ریزش‌ها در نیروهای حکومت نشان دهنده آن است که شرایط لحظه به لحظه در حال تغییر است. اعدام‌ها نه فقط مردم را نترسانده، بلکه هم خشم آنها را بیشتر کرده و هم عزم آنها را راسختر که با حکومت در شرایط جنگی قرار دارند و اینها با سلام و صلوات نمی‌روند.
مجیدرضا رهنورد هم مثل محسن شکاری اعدام شد. پس نتیجه میگیریم هشتگ اعدام نکنید و درخواست اعدام نکنید از حکومتی که بر پایه استبداد و ظلم و جنایت و خون ریخته شده اثر بخش نیست. حکومتی که برای بقای خودش از هیچ جنایتی فروگذار نخواهد بود. احمقانه است که فکر کنیم آخوندها و جمهوری اسلامی ایران سرشار از منابع و ثروت را با سلام و صلوات رها خواهند کرد. احمقانه تر این که منتظر حمایت و کمک کشورهای خارجی بمونیم. 30 سال پیش فریدون فرخزاد گفت خاک بر سر ملتی که منتظر چراغ سبز آمریکا و انگلیس بمونه. آمریکا و انگلیسی که خودش اینها رو بر ما حاکم کرد. من شخصا دیگه منتظر ائتلاف اپوزیسیون ها و احزاب و چهره های خارج از کشور هم نیستم. چون اگر قرار بود کاری بکنن تو این 43 سال کرده بودن. اگر قرار بود ائتلافی شکل بگیره و اتحادی صورت بگیره تا امروز باید صورت میگرفت. شاید ما هنوز فرهنگ دوره میز نشستن با عقاید و سلایق و اعتقادات مختلف رو هم نداریم. ما مردم ایران فقط همدیگه رو داریم. چشم امیدتون فقط به همدیگه باشه.
رابێرت گرین، نویسنده و استراتژیست آمریکایی، در پاسخ به درخواست‌ها و پرسش‌های زیاد انقلابیون ایران که چگونه باید عمل کنند تا بتوانند به پیروزی برسند، میگوید مردم سمت قوی‌تر ماجرا هستند و ترس حکومت بسیار بزرگتر از ترس مردم است. رابێرت گرین میگوید حکومت سعی دارد با تفرقه افکنی و ساکت نگه داشتن مردم آنها را از هم دور و بی صدا کند. او به مردم میگوید که چگونه بر این تاکتیک حکومت غلبه کنند. او تعریف دقیقی از اتحاد ارائه میدهد.
These kind of totalitarian authoritarian regimes, they might appear very strong, and as they say, the crackdown has been very brutal, but they're incredibly fearful. They appear strong, but they're actually riddled with all kinds of weaknesses. And their weakness is the fear that they have. They have all of the money, they've monopolized the wealth of your country. They've monopolized the weaponry, the military, etc. But you have the numbers. And if you gather together, if you concentrate those numbers, if you create a nationwide movement, that terrifies them. They live every day with the insecurity knowing that the numbers could completely destroy them and they have a lot to lose. So while you might appear to be the weaker side because you don't have the money and you don't have the weaponry on your side, you are in essence the stronger side if you realize this basic fact of strategy, that they are terrified of movements like yours. This is for every kind of totalitarian, authoritarian regime in the world. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. You are the stronger side in this struggle. So in my study of these things, there are two things that authoritarian dictatorships survive by, their main strategy. And I would summarize it with two words: separation and silence. And those two things, separation and silence, actually go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. And what I mean by this is, since you have the stronger hand in this through the numbers of people, literally, quantity, their main strategy is to keep you continually separated. If you join together in any form, in any kind of public way, through demonstrations, through unions, whatever, that gives you power. So their whole game is to keep you continually separated. And I compare it to some kind of machine that is continually kind of grinding things down and separating them to smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. They want you to be spending most of your time at home, worrying about how to get by with money and concerned about your own private life, as opposed to thinking about the country as a whole. They want to separate you in various ways. They want to pit men versus women. They want to pit Persians versus Kurds. They want to pit upper classes versus middle classes. They want to pit whatever it is that they can, so that by dividing you, the old strategy of divide and conquer, that strength that you have in numbers is greatly diluted, and they can have the upper hand. So they're trying to continually crush and pressure you into spending most of your time outside the public realm. They may try to bribe you, like, well, spend your time, you can do your time shopping, you can go to malls, you can go to movies, but anything that involves the public, where it's not on the, where people can express their dissatisfaction, that is forbidden. So they've slowly tried to erode, these kinds of regimes try to slowly erode any kind of public space, any kind of gathering spot for people in the square, any kind of political rally, and also unions. They're trying to get rid of any kind of unions. This goes hand in hand with the other strategy of silence. And the thing is, in these kinds of situations in countries that are suffering under these kinds of regimes, most people, the majority of people, are quite miserable. You have no power. You live in terror. You live in fear. But you don't get to express that. You're not mingling with other people. There's no outlet for it, except maybe on social media, which they greatly control, and there's lots of censorship. They control the media, the mainstream media, as it were. So they envelop you in this kind of silence, where everybody is unhappy, or most people in Iran or in these countries, 90%, 95% are deeply unhappy about it, but there's no way to understand that everybody else feels the same way. I like to call that a public secret. It's shared by everybody in the public, but it's a secret that nobody gets to talk about or express. So they're trying to continually silence you by controlling the internet, by controlling social media, by getting rid of all kinds of spaces where you could congregate and express and understand that most people in the country feel the same way. The main response on your side is to overcome this separation, to show that this idea that you are separated is an illusion, that this idea that you're not unhappy, that you're not miserable, is an illusion. You want to break this kind of spell that they have created over you, where you're all separated, you're all living in your private homes, you're all living in your little neighborhoods, and nobody's communicating with one another. So you want like a nationwide movement. You want to open the doors so that everybody is seen together, visibly seen together. The more numbers, the better. And you want to try and resist this kind of dynamic that they're foisting upon you of continual separation. So what is happening in these movements, and we've seen it in Sri Lanka, we've seen it in Russia, we've seen it in other parts of the world, in the Arab Spring movement, where there is this beginning of this swelling movement among the populace that's growing, is that they're going to continually try to pit one side against another. They want to kind of fracture your movement. They want to make it seem that you are actually going to create more problems, that businesses are going to fail, that you're going to make life worse for people in this country. So they're going to try and separate the working classes from the elites, etc., or men versus women, because this is a movement that largely at first was generated by women with the Amini protest, which is one of the most important factors in your favor, actually, because the thing is, if you get women involved in a movement like this, it's women from all classes, women from all ethnicities. This bridges all of the separation gaps that they're trying to create. You're overcoming this separating tendency they're bringing through actually the organizing of women of all classes and ethnicities throughout the country. But they're going to try and separate you, and you have to resist this with all of your might. So you're all in this together. Every person, every ethnicity, every faction is in this together, and you're not going to fall for the dynamic where they're going to try and separate you on any level. The other thing is the silence. You have to be continually voicing and making it apparent and making it clear so that this public secret becomes public knowledge. Everybody in the country knows what is going on. Everybody knows that everybody else, their neighbors, are equally unhappy. Everyone has the same similar kind of complaints and gripes and is suffering in the same way. And your voices are raised, and you're raising it continually. You're shouting from your balconies. You're shouting from the rooftops. You're giving slogans out. You're breaking the spell of silence they're trying to foist on you on a day-to-day basis.
این تحلیلگر بهترین روش را برای انقلابیون روش امواج می‌داند و می‌گوید هر روز بیرون نیایید، اما هر چند روز یک بار هم قدرت سرکوب را از آنها می‌گیرد و هم بین آنها همان شکاف و تفرقه‌ای را ایجاد می‌کند که حکومت می‌خواست میان شما ایجاد کند.
Every few days or every week you hit them with a new wave. You're out on the streets with a new, in different cities, in different parts, or for a different reason, or for different groups, but it's continual. So there'll be a lull for a few days where everybody kind of takes their breath, and you come at them again with even a bigger wave, bigger and bigger and bigger, and you keep the pressure on them continually, long enough so that you start to create cracks in them. This is what happened recently in Sri Lanka, for example. And so the separation that they're trying to push on you, where they're making you fight amongst yourselves, you are now going to impose on them through your pressure by creating these waves that are bigger and bigger and bigger. You're going to begin to peel off people from the elite classes or others who supported them to not be in their interest anymore. You're going to create separations within the security forces, within the military, within the hierarchies themselves through this continual kind of wave movement.
رابرت گرین میگوید از آنجایی که رژیم غرق در فساد اقتصادی است، اعتصابات سراسری به طور متناوب میتواند ضربه موثری به آن وارد کند. او به مردم ایران میگوید این مبارزه باید ماه‌ها به طور مداوم و پیگیر ادامه داشته باشد تا بین نیروهای حکومت شکاف ایجاد شود. او به انقلابیون توصیه میکند گروه هماهنگ کننده داشته باشند و استراتژی. او ضمن تحسین خیزش مردمی در ایران میگوید اگر این جنبش موفق شد یکی از زیباترین اتفاقهای قرن 21 خواهد بود. شما درباره حرفهای او و چگونگی تحقق زیباترین اتفاق قرن 21 چه نظری دارید؟
The thing that's important is to think of not having a group of leaders because that creates other problems, but to have kind of these committees of people who understand the dangers that the petering out, the lowering of energy will inevitably happen, and who kind of plot ways to keep the pot stirred over and over and over again. Okay? So strategy in this moment, in this kind of moment, is your best defense. Just kind of trying to operate strictly on anger and strictly by bitterness and all the kind of emotions that are stirred up by this brutal regime. It's not enough. It's very powerful. It can lead to something very exciting for the moment, but it can wear off, and and in those moments where it wears off, it's extremely dangerous. So strategizing, understanding that you want to keep the pressure on continually, right? You want to keep coming back at them week after week after week after week with something new, upping the ante, increasing the numbers of people who are on your side day by day. That is your strength, and that is how you're going to make them make mistakes and eventually, hopefully, completely change the nature of your country. Because, to be honest with you, to create a true democracy in Iran, a true republic, one that reflects your own incredibly rich history, would be one of the most beautiful events of the 21st century if it could happen. And you can't let this moment pass, and you can't let it die down, because as I said, it is extremely dangerous, because once that energy starts to flag, they're going to be coming at you like an animal. They're going to be creating that pressure to separate and silence you further and further, and it's going to be even harder to get back up on your feet the next time. You know, these things have to create their own momentum, and it must be continual. So your power, your strategy must be, how can we continually keep the pot stirred, not just for weeks, but for months, until things start to crack on their side. They're wanting you to crack and you to divide by class, by faction, and you're trying to get them to crack. So keep the whole thing as unified as possible. Have, the fact that it's being led by women and fueled by women is the greatest thing in your favor. And understand that so many of us here in the West and in the United States and elsewhere, we're following events very closely, everything I can about Iran. You have all of my sympathy. I'm 100% for you. And I hope this has some value for you moving forward. Thank you very much.
ممنون از اینکه تا پایان این گزارش با ما همراه بودید. این روزها به حمایت شما بیشتر از هر زمان دیگری نیازمندیم، زیرا کوچه به شدت مورد حملات سایبری قرار دارد. لطفاً اگر کوچه را دوست دارید و اگر روش ما را در انعکاس رویدادها میپسندید، ویدیوها را لایک کنید، آنها را به اشتراک بگذارید و با فشردن دکمه‌های جوین و تانکس حامی مالی کوچه باشید تا تلاش کسانی که می‌خواهند کوچه را نابود کنند خنثی شود. همچنین هیچ کدام از دروغ‌های خنده‌دار این روزها را درباره کوچه باور نکنید. کوچه مستقل است و رها، مانند خود شما، یکی از دل مردم کوچه و بازار، چراغی در دل تاریکی با شما تا روز آزادی. سپاس.